Welcome to the Dark Ascent podcast, where we enter into the deepest secrets of black magic and the left-hand path. This is episode 4, Receiving Answers from the Unmanifest. To learn more about our work, please visit darkascent.org. Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast. I am Melektoth, and I'm here as always with my wife Elinara.
Hello.
And today we are talking about a topic that I think is something that can help a lot of people, even though not a lot of people ask this question, simply because they don't really know it's possible or they don't really think about it much. And that is receiving answers. Receiving answers from the unmanifest, receiving answers from spirits, receiving answers from the universe, whatever you want to call it. In my law of attraction days, I would always say, how to receive answers in the universe, but it applies to anything. And I think I alluded to this a little bit. It might have been last week. I don't remember, the week before. But I said that a lot of people will pray and never really expect to receive answers from their God or from whoever they're praying to. They just sort of pray and they hope something happens, but it's not a two-way communication for them. And I think my whole life, it was sometimes that way, but as I grew up more and as I became more intuitive, it became a lot easier to receive answers. And especially once I started learning about the law of attraction, I started learning about black magic, everything just really started to click into place. And it got to the point where anytime I had a question at all, I could just basically receive an answer.
Yeah, you're lucky. A lot of people can't do that.
Yeah, and I tell people about this and they're like, oh, I didn't know, it's like they're looking for signs in their life. Like, oh, is this a sign from the universe? I'm like, well, just ask. You can receive answers really directly. So just ask. And
I think it's a very advanced technique, though.
Yeah, it can be. I hope that if I explain it, that it's something that people can understand. So, and we'll see how this works. But it's something that definitely takes practice. But from my experience, there's never been something I've asked about that I haven't been able to get an answer to, no matter what that thing is. So, I believe that, especially as black magicians, it's within our purview, it's within our right to be able to receive answers. Especially as you start working with various beings. I started working with Hades in 2016.
Like October or something?
Yeah, October 2016. And then I started working with Lucifer and other demons in the end of, 2018. Yeah. And so, as you start working with these different spirits, it's really paramount that you learn how to receive answers from them. And so a lot of people will talk about opening their astral senses and, so that you can receive answers directly. And that is really useful, but this is a little bit separate from that. So one way you can receive answers that is valid and is really useful is by opening what we call your astral senses. So you basically have an astral sense for every physical sense. You have astral sight, astral hearing, astral touch, and you use those astral senses to receive immediate information from the spirit world or from whatever spirit or demon you're communicating with. And so that could mean receiving messages, hearing messages from a spirit, or it could mean seeing symbols, having a vision of something, or feeling certain sensations. That's usually the easiest to open up. And that's one way that people can receive answers, but it's a very advanced way and it takes a while to get there. And even I think when you do get more advanced with that, there's always sort of this doubt about, am I really receiving information?
Yeah, that's
right?
The hard thing.
It is. It's hard to trust that you are really receiving actual information from the other side, from the spirits, because a lot of times it seems so much like your own thoughts. And especially sometimes when you really start delving into this realm and you really start to interact with other black magicians on this path, some of them, to me, and it's hard to judge, but some of them can seem a little off the deep end. So it's like, well, did that spirit really tell you that? Or are you a little off the deep end. So it's hard because, some people can seem kind of out there.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, am I out there? Am I receiving accurate information? Or, so it's a little bit hard. And you want to not doubt too much, but also not go off the deep end and be insane and crazy. So it's a really difficult thing. So that's always going to be there. But there is a way of receiving answers that is separate from just these immediate answers in your head that you can definitely doubt in. And you can doubt in anything. I mean, I talked about last week, these intersection points between the worlds, these magical points where magic is most potent. And I talked about, places where things can be more easily manipulated. You can see things in the fog or in the smoke. But the thing about these places too is that you can also doubt what you see. And I sort of talked about how the objective universe almost wants you to doubt what you see. And so immediately after you see something or experience something out of the ordinary, you start to sort of doubt it and say, did I really experience that? And so there's never, because of this sort of principle, I guess you would call it, because of that, there's never really anything, unfortunately, that you can't doubt if you try hard enough, if you're skeptical enough. Like, you can never prove to a skeptic,
no,
yeah, this is, I got this answer from this demon or from the spirit or whatever, and here's how I can prove it. They can always call that into question. I think there's two reasons for that. I think the first reason is that the objective universe wants, like I said, to bring everything into alignment with itself. So if you have an experience that's outside the norm, it sort of sets into place right away to erase that experience almost. Okay, and that's why we see some of these glitches that, like, you have this experience and then you go back later and that doesn't even exist anymore, that place or that, whatever it is. But also, it's meant to sort of be, I don't want to say faith. It sounds so religious, and I don't want it to be like that.
But it is, though, sort of. I mean...
Yeah, in a sense. It's meant to be something you have to stretch your imagination and to go out on a limb a little bit, to have a bit of faith, not necessarily blind faith, but just have a little bit of faith that something actually happened, that you actually came into contact with a force, a real force of the universe.
And sometimes at first it might be blind faith, especially if you're brand new to this kind of thing.
Right, exactly, yeah.
It's one of those things you kind of have to fight through at first, But you can find proof from other people that have gone through similar things.
Right.
Or whatever.
And there is a certain level of experience that I've called this already before. I've talked about this a little bit, gnosis.
Yeah.
Where you have such a personal, direct experience that it's something that's almost in your soul, part of you. But even then, you could call that into doubt, or someone else could come along and say, oh no, that's just, it's nothing. And there comes a point as a black magician where you have to trust your information, because there's never going to be a time where something happens that's so convincing that you absolutely cannot doubt it. So this is sometimes one of the most common questions I get is, well, I had this experience, but I don't know if it really happened. You'll remember, Elinara, there was an experience where someone came to us and said, yeah, I had this thing happen, and I saw these images and these symbols, but was it really a spirit or a demon, or was it just my imagination?
Yeah. If this is who I think it is, this is a particular person who is a skeptic.
Exactly, yeah.
So even we could tell them until we're blue in the face that, oh yeah, it was an experience and blah, 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 but then they can explain it away.
Exactly. And so, that's a common thing, though, is like you have this experience and you say, well, was it really real? Yes, it was real. Okay. Trust your experiences. And as you're opening up to receive answers from the Unmanifest, just trust your experiences. That's, I think, the first most important step. Trust your experiences and trust that they are real. Okay, because, and I talked about this last week a little bit, in our subjective universe, we sort of automatically doubt it. Like, oh, it's just in my head.
Well, it is.
It's just in my head. But in your head, it's actually not really, because...
Yeah, that's true.
The thoughts in your head, the things you imagine, yes, maybe physically there are, neural signals being fired in your brain and whatnot, but those also exist on an astral level.
Yeah.
And you're actually interacting with real energetic forces. Maybe they're in your subjective universe, maybe they're not physical, but they are real things. So you have to sort of come to trust, and actually trust is real. Mm-hmm. Your subjective experience, your subjective universe. When you have a thought, when you have a random thought that shows up, not just think that's random data, but actually believe that this is a real experience. Because if it's in your subjective universe, that means there are real energies in play that are causing this. And so it is a real experience. Okay, so receiving answers from the universe, like I said, trust is definitely a prerequisite to that. But here's the thing. So there's a common quote, and it's attributed to Einstein a lot, but I think there's doubt about whether that really is. I'm just going to paraphrase it, but it's basically something like, you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness from which it was created.
Oh, I thought that was Einstein.
There's a lot of stuff people say is Einstein that isn't, so I don't know. I'm just saying it's commonly said to be Einstein. I can't promise that it actually is. There's a lot of stuff out there. Oh yeah, Einstein said this, and there's no actual record of him saying that. So I don't know for sure, but it's a quote, and it's a good quote, so we're going to use it.
Mm-hmm. It's so true, though.
But you can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness from which it was created. Now, a little of this will get into law of attraction territory, because it's really where it comes in, because you don't need to perform a big elaborate ritual to receive an answer from the universe or from the Unmanifest or from a demon or from a spirit or whatever. You don't need to do a big elaborate ritual. You don't need to do any ritual. Maybe if you want to have direct communication where you have them speaking to you directly, then maybe you want to do a more advanced evocation. But if your astral senses aren't open yet, then is there much of a point to that? It depends.
Yeah.
If you're trying to work with someone specific. But let's just say you're going along your path and you want to know, hey, universe, hey, spirits that are working with me or whoever I'm working with, what's the answer to this question?
I even hate just using the universe because...
Well, it's the most general. I don't want to say God.
Yeah.
So very quickly, I see the cosmology of the universe sort of split up into a few different ways. I see when I say the universe, I'm not talking about an intelligent force, like God or something. I'm talking about a mechanical, I hate to say mechanical, but like gravity is a law. It just happens. No one is sitting in some control room somewhere making gravity happen. Well, that's how, let's say the law of attraction or a lot of these other laws take place, is that there's not an intelligent force that is making that happen. It's just a law. It's a mechanical force that is causing this to happen. And so when I say universe, I mean the set of these principles, these mechanical principles that don't have an intelligent source, but just are. Okay, so when I say you receive an answer from the universe, it's sort of akin to typing something in Google and getting an answer, right? In fact, I have one of my first blog posts, I think, maybe back from 2016, maybe 2015, I don't remember. But it was called something like receiving, what was it? Like something about the universal search engine.
Yes.
Remember that? And, it was this metaphor of, you use Google by typing in your search phrase, and you can use the universal search engine in the same sort of way. And I taught how to do that. So this is something I've been teaching for years, but it's just, I think a lot of people miss it. So that's what I mean by universe. And then you have actual conscious beings like gods and angels and demons and whatnot. And those are, you specifically say, I want to work with this being. Sometimes they'll seek you out, but it depends. But if you're not specifically working with someone, you have to get an answer from somewhere. So where's it coming from? It's coming from, the universe, this universal search engine, so to speak, this universal Google. So, that's where that's coming from. But it just, it's good to know, because you might be asking a certain spirit because of their expertise, or you might just be asking the universe as a whole. The type of answer you'll get differs depending on whom you're asking and, what their expertise is versus just the universe itself. So that just depends. But like I said, a lot of this goes into sort of law of attraction territory because you don't need to do really an elaborate ritual or anything like that. It's just not necessary. A lot of this is just mental work. But I would say 90% of black magic is just mental work.
Yeah.
It's not, we don't need to whip out a ritual circle for every little thing. I mean, eventually the goal is to do as much as possible internally, where you master your reality, you master your universe in your own mind, and therefore your outer reality is also mastered. So that's definitely the goal, and that happens in time. But we use ritual to bridge that gap. But for something simple like this, and this is simple, it's an ability that we all have that we've forgotten to use. But for something simple like this, you don't need ritual, you don't need candles, you don't need any kind of weird ritual implements or anything like that. So what do I mean by questions? It could be anything. It could literally be anything. I literally asked recently, why do we work? Like, why do most humans, almost all, I mean, obviously there are some who just get by on their wealth, but why do almost all humans have to hold a job of some kind? And why does that work have elements that are almost always unpleasant? Hopefully not the whole thing, but there are always elements that are unpleasant in some way. Yep. It seems unfair sometimes that, we spend half of our waking hours doing something that a lot of times we'd rather not do, or doing something that we have to do, and maybe, a lot of law of attraction people will say, well, that's just a limiting belief about abundance. There are other ways around that, but regardless, it seems like most people are stuck in this cycle of work. And even if you're lucky enough to make, your hobby into a job or something, a lot of people discourage that because, then it becomes a requirement and it's not as enjoyable. So I literally asked, why is that? I'm not going to go into the answer here because that's totally off topic, but that was like a question I asked. And then after a few days, I received the answer, and it got deeper and deeper.
It was everywhere too.
It was everywhere. Yeah, it was everywhere. So the questions can be anything. It can be, how does the universe work? Like this one specific principle. And that's how I learned a lot about the law of attraction, about black magic. Is I would say, okay, well, I got this, but what about this? How does this work? How does this fit together? And then I get that answer. Or sometimes it's something like, okay, I don't know what direction I should go in. So I have this possibility or that possibility. I don't know what I should do. And I get an answer to that. Or this has been happening lately, I have some of the components of my goals in place, but I don't know how it all fits together. I don't know how to complete this vision. I don't know how, it's supposed to work. And so I'll get the answer to that. Okay, and that sort of starts to fit together. So anything can be the answer. And in fact, this is so flexible that, in fact, you can make anything a question. In fact, every manifestation is, in a sense, a question.
Yeah, it really is. You're right.
For example, let's say I want more money, or I want a relationship or something. That's a question, is it not? It's something you want an answer to. A question is something to which you do not yet have an answer. And the answer comes, and the answer is the manifestation, right? So the same method can be used for anything, and I've used it for anything.
It's like, life is like Jeopardy.
Yeah. Leave it to Elinara. Little zingers like that. Life is like Jeopardy.
Well, you have the answer and then the question.
Yes. But, this can be used for anything. So, like I said, if I want more money, if I want a relationship, if I want a job, if I want whatever, I use this method. That's my question. And then the universe or a spirit or whatever brings me the answer in the form of a physical thing, a physical manifestation. It works literally the exact same way. You don't know how many things I've gotten in this way just by using this technique.
Which I've never tried it, and I really should.
You really haven't tried it, have you?
No.
It's really flexible. It's
like asking the question, like, how did I get this job that was best for me?
Mm-hmm.
And then just waiting to see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's such a flexible technique, and you can really use it for anything. And, I mean, if you have a lot of resistance to something, that's where, like, ritual can come in. But this is such a versatile technique that really you can use it anywhere. So it's sort of, you can experiment with this a lot and see how far it goes. And I encourage you to do that, in fact. So, all right, enough talking about the technique, and let's actually talk how to do the technique. So here's what it is. You have a question, you have an answer. And the quote, I paraphrase, sort of gives the key to how this actually works, which is interesting. So whoever came up with the quote is smart, whether it's Einstein or not. You can't solve a problem. A problem is just another question, right? At the same level of consciousness from which it was created. And so, speaking of problems, just as a quick aside, I do the same thing at work, okay? I'm a programmer, and at work, there are so many times where I'm like, I have no idea how to fix this. I have absolutely no clue. And so I'll say, okay, I don't know how to fix this. That's a question. That's a question. That's a problem. It's a question. It's the same thing. That's a question. So let me use this technique and get the answer. And it works every single time. There are times I literally just stumble upon the answer because, I use this technique and I had no idea otherwise how to do it. And so it works for problems, anything like that, problem solving and things like that. So, again, you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness from which it was created. So you could also say you can't answer a question from the same level of consciousness from which it was asked. You can't get a desire from the same level of consciousness from which it was inspired. Okay, so there's 3 versions of that, and they all point to the same thing. And this is so powerful when you really understand what's being said here. So you have a question, or a problem, or a desire, whatever, but we're just going to say a question, because we're answering questions here. You have your question. Now, a question has a very specific feeling about it. Let's say I have a question about anything, whatever, think of a question if you want. It could be about anything. But a question has a very specific feeling about it. Let's say I have a question like,
how do I get my dream job?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that's what I'm working on. So
yeah. So that question has a very specific feeling about it. Yep. And it's a feeling of a bit of tension, a bit of lack, because you don't have the answer, a bit of maybe wanting. It's mild. It's not like I'm suffering when I ask this question, but it's like I'm asking a question I don't have the answer for.
Yep.
And I'd like the answer.
Yep.
Right? So it's this active sort of searching for the answer. Like, it's hard to describe this, but an active feeling of where's the answer. Okay? Now, the thing with magic, and this is so subtle, it's all about emotions. It's all about emotions. The thing with magic is that you get what you feel. Okay, so your emotions, I think I mentioned this before, your emotions are the key to unlocking magic, okay? Your emotions are the key to unlocking magic. And so whatever emotions you feel, that's the kind of experience you're going to have. So this question, this is where this quote comes in, this question of how am I going to get my dream job? Or what is my dream job if I don't know?
Yeah, exactly.
Where do I look? How do I start? What do I apply to? There's a million questions that can come from that. Those questions all sort of feel like, I don't have the answer. I'm lacking the answer. I want the answer. I'm lacking the answer. And so what do I do? So that question is a certain level of consciousness. In the law of attraction community, they'll often call it a vibration. Okay, I don't care what you call it. An emotional state, a vibration, a level of consciousness. I don't care what you call it. Okay, but it's a certain, let's call it a vibration just because it's a common term people use. It's certain vibration, right? This question, a vibration of sort of a little bit of lack, a little bit of searching, a little bit of wanting, a little bit of where's the answer, right? Very subtle, but it's there. Do you feel that when you think of that? Yeah. So what's the quote? You can't solve a problem or answer a question from the same level of consciousness from which it was asked. Okay? From which it was created. So that means the answer can't come as long as you're in that question. We're going to call it the question state.
I love it.
Okay? Now, for people who are familiar with the law of attraction, this is going to sound very traditional LOA, and a lot of it is, but there's something that goes beyond that, and I want you to pay attention for that. So we're calling this the question state, and as long as you're in the question state, guess what you'll get? You'll get questions. Yeah. You'll get questions.
Who'd have thunk?
Yeah. You'll get questions, because that's what you're in alignment with. You're in alignment with questions. Okay? Again, as long as you're here, you can't get the answer. That's what the quote says, and it's true. Okay? You can't solve the problem from the same level of consciousness from which it was created. You just can't do it. All right? So this is the question state, and we want to get out of here as quickly as possible, because as long as you're here, you get questions. Okay? And you're reminded of the question, like, well, I want my dream job. Where's my dream job? How do I create it? What is it? Where do I start? And you get all these questions, and that's what you're left with. You have questions. You're in the question state, question consciousness. Now, as simple as this sounds, I'll explain it, but you want to change to the answer state, to answer consciousness, which is a totally separate place from question consciousness, right? So what does the answer feel like? Well, how do I know? I don't have the answer. Well, no, but you know what the answer feels like. What does it feel like to have an answer? So imagine you are in school and you're doing a really difficult assignment or really difficult problem. Let's say it's a really complex math problem or something, and you're struggling with it for a while. Okay, so you're in this question state, like, I'm trying to solve it. And then you figure it out.
And you're like,
yeah, exactly that.
It's relief.
Yeah, that sense of it's solved. I got the answer.
Sometimes you're even excited, like, yes!
Yeah, exactly. I get that all the time as a programmer. Like, I have this problem. I don't know how to solve it. And
oh my gosh.
And then I figure it out. And it's like, yay, I figured it out.
You should hear him when he's programming. He's the most vocal programmer.
Oh, yeah. I'm very vocal about
we'll
it.
be sitting here on the couch and he'll be working and I'll hear, yes! You'll hear that.
Yeah, and so, that's the answer state. Yeah. That's the answer state, because you've solved it, you've figured out the answer, you found the answer, you've received the answer.
Yeah.
So you know what the answer feels like, even if you don't know what the answer is. So this sounds ridiculously simple and silly, but I'm telling you it works. All you do essentially is you feel the answer, right? Like, if you're in the question state, if you're thinking, what's the answer? I don't know the answer. I have this question I don't have the answer to. Then again, you're only ever going to get the question. Mm-hmm. But if you're in the answer state and you're thinking, yeah, an answer exists. You could start there. Like, an answer definitely exists. Like, I know from experience, every problem has a solution. Every question has an answer. Okay? So I can be in the answer state. And so you sort of ask the question, and that's fine. You have to ask the question. And then you say, well, okay, that's the question. Now, there is an answer. And I'm going to feel that answer. I'm going to feel the answer and let myself be in the answer state. Now you might say, how can I be in the answer state if I don't have the answer yet? You just have to. You have to lead with your emotions. In fact, I think I have a webinar or some kind of class or something where I talk about leading with your emotions.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
From a while ago. You have to lead with your emotions.
And you use your past experiences.
Right.
Of every time you felt an answer, what did you feel?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what the answer is, because you always feel the same thing.
Exactly. So you have to feel the answer first before you get the answer. Okay? A lot of people experience this as, you have this long-standing question, and then you get tired of it and you drop the question. You're like, forget it. Maybe you walk away from it. Or, you hear people all the time, like really famous scientists who will walk away. You'll walk in the garden or something, or they'll go take a shower, or they'll just sleep on it, and the answer will come because they dropped that question consciousness and entered into the answer consciousness. And so that happens naturally, but you can lead that process. You don't have to wait until you get tired of it. You can ask the question and then just be in the answer state, and the answer will come. Okay, so again, that sounds really simple, and it is if you don't have a lot of resistance. And this is why this works really well for questions where, it's not the end of the world, it's not life or death sort of thing, it's just a question. And so it works for desires too, like I said. And so it also works for desires where it's not the most intense desire in the world. It's not like life or death. It's not, this huge thing. It can work for that if you can drop the resistance, but that's a whole different ball game there. Yeah. And that's where really the deeper parts of black magic come in. But this very simple technique can be used where
it's just a question.
It's just a question, or it's just a very simple desire, or I've used it for very big desires, but you have to know what to do with resistance. So that's what the difficulty is. So anymore, I use this for so much of what I do. I mean, I do definitely do like evocations and things, but it just depends for me. So, this can be used for things like that. But if you just feel the answer and know that there's an answer, because I don't know, I have come to learn and believe in my own experience that every question has an answer, every problem has a solution, every desire has a manifestation. Yeah. So if you can believe that very simple thing, then you know that anything is possible. You know that you can have whatever you want, no matter if it's an answer or the solution to a problem or a desire fulfilled. You know you can have whatever you want.
Is it something you should always focus on the answer, or is it one of those things where you focus on it once and drop it?
I am a big believer in immersing yourself in the emotional state, in the answer state of what you want. And so, there are some people who say just think of it once and you're fine. I don't believe that.
No.
That's not my experience. And so, I will do this and I will hold it for not an extensive period of time. Like there are people who like try to visualize for 15 minutes and I'll tell them, look, I am way too lazy for that kind of thing. Like I have never visualized something for 15 minutes. There is no way you're getting me to do that.
Well, and I feel like you can feel it for a longer time.
But the point is you don't really need to.
Yeah.
So I do maybe 30 seconds to a minute, if that. And then it's fine. And then maybe later I'll do it again. If I think about it again, I'll do it again. Now here's the thing. So it depends what the situation is. If I'm in the middle of work and I have a programming issue, I can't really wait a few days. And, wherever these answers come from, it knows that. So those answers tend to come
very fast.
In a matter of minutes, maybe hours. Okay, so usually I'll do that. Maybe I'll step away for a few minutes, take a break. I'll feel the answer for a few seconds. Literally, it could be 15 seconds.
That is so awesome.
Just feel the answer. Know there's an answer. And then it comes. Okay, so that kind of thing, it happens almost instantly. A matter of minutes or hours. Now, something like question that I ask about the universe itself or about the nature of things, about black magic, that can take some more time because you sort of have to be transformed within yourself as well, where, maybe you can't receive the answer right now. Maybe you have to receive it in steps. Or like there was a goal I'm working on that I was asking, how does this all fit together? And so it took about a day or two, and then I was led to, literally, this is how practical this is. I was led to a WordPress plugin because it was a question about how to implement something I wanted to do.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm. And I was led to a WordPress plugin because I realized the software I was using just wasn't going to cut it. And so I was led to that plugin and, spent the money to buy it. And that ended up being like the perfect answer. And I didn't ask for a practical answer. I asked, well, how do I fit this together? Because it's, I didn't even think about it could be a limitation of the software. I was just thinking, how do I fit these options together? And then
the whole answer went boom.
The answer came like well, get this plugin instead of, using the software you use now, the servers you use now. So I bought this plugin and I installed it, and it's like everything I needed it to be.
And it's cheaper.
So, sometimes you'll get a whole bunch of desires sort of all falling into place at once when you start doing this. And so, then there was another question after that, and then that was answered, and then there was another question after that, and then, there's a current question I'm working on, and that will come, I'm sure, in a day or two. But, it keeps evolving. So as far as when to focus on it, how often to focus on it, I focus on it for maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute at the most. I don't spend a lot of time on this. Maybe later on in the day, I might think about it again. Oh, okay, that's the question. Here's the answer state. Okay, let me hold the answer state. So every time you feel the question, every time you ask the question in your mind, go into the answer state.
And sometimes you might have to reword the question.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you think of the answer state, sometimes you get anxious.
Yeah, it can happen.
And because I was playing around with the dream job thing.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of asking that, I realized I'm like, okay, what's my next step?
Yeah.
Instead.
Right, exactly.
So sometimes you have to reword the question so you're not like, okay.
And I have little tricks around that too that I've taught my clients over the years, and it's worked for me immensely. And that's a different topic. But, yeah, you can definitely reword the question. That's really useful. But, just think about it periodically. Enter the answer state. It might take a few days. Just don't, you want to have a balance between never thinking about it, and so you don't really give energy to it, versus thinking about it so much. There's an effect I call the watched pot effect. Yeah. The expression, a watched pot never boils, and it's sort of this thing, a watched desire never manifests. And so if you keep watching the question, even if you're trying to feel the answer state, there's a sort of tension behind it, and you're sort of not letting it go enough, and then, it can't really manifest as long as you're looking at it. So you want a balance between those two, okay? And so it might take a few days. I've, for simple things like this, for answers to questions, I've never had it take longer than a couple of days. Now, if it's a more major manifestation, it will still start appearing within a few days a lot of times. I would give it up to a week. This is what I tell my clients, and this is, again, probably another topic. But this stuff does not have to take months or years. I increased, through very similar techniques, my income by 3 times over, threefold.
That's so crazy.
Within a matter of 7 months. Now, I didn't do it all in one step. I increased it by a little bit at a time. Every month. And it would take, a few weeks to really get those results. But I always tell people this should not take a long time. You can have massive results within literally a few months. 6 or 7 months is what it took me. And then I did it again, I doubled it again, and it took maybe 4 months the second time. So...
And you were doing the watched pot thing with that one.
I was really anxious about that one, so that's why it took so long, because I was really anxious about it.
But still, 4 months is better than 7 months.
And then eventually, it only happened when I decided, you know what, I give up. It's not going to happen. And then, poof, happened.
Yep.
Anyway, but, I've created massive change in my life just through these sorts of techniques.
So cool.
And so it's possible, but you have to let yourself go into the answer state. So, like I said, focus on it every so often. Don't tackle it to the ground. Don't obsess about it. That's a sure sign, of you're not going to get it because you're worried way too much about it. Again, the watched pot effect.
And, when you're in the answer state, it's like, okay, you have a sense of peace because you're like, okay, I did the answer state, so we'll just see what happens now. Mm-hmm. It's like out of my hands kind of thing.
Exactly. This is so simple, and it's like, oh, well, black magic, this should be really creepy and mysterious and hard. No, it's not necessarily. It doesn't have to be that hard. It doesn't have to be. Yes, we can get into rituals, and we will. We can get into evocation and calling up demons, but the basics are the basics are the basics. And the basics are that any magician worth their salt should be able to get answers from the universe.
Yeah, that's true.
Or from spirits or whatever. And like I said, this will work with spirits too. I can say, hey, Lucifer, this is my question. Okay.
You do it all the time.
And either there are one of three ways I'll get the answer. Either number one, I'll get it right away in my head. Okay, sometimes it'll happen. Number two, if I'm kind of too anxious about it or not unsure about it to do that, I will do automatic writing, which, again, another topic for another day, which is I'll sit down and get out a document on my computer and start typing, and he will type through me, or whatever spirit, doesn't matter who it is, will type through me. But number three, if it's just something where it's like, I've literally asked them questions, even during evocation, I've said, okay, whatever demon it is, here's my question. And they'll say, sometimes they'll answer it right away, but sometimes they'll say, you will get the answer later. Because I'm just not at the level of understanding where I can get it right that second. Right? They need to show me something through this process. They need to show me resources. They need to show me whatever to get the answer that I need.
And sometimes you have to be shown through the mundane world.
Yes, exactly. Just like the plug-in thing. It was like just a random, I don't remember how I came across it, but just a random thought, just a random thing you see online or something like that. It can work through anything. So even if you have no psychic senses whatsoever, you can still do this. This is the magic of this technique.
And that's nice because, like, for me, because I'm so new to this, I'm not like Melektoth. So, you know, for me, doing an evocation is very intimidating because I can't really, I'm not that great yet at hearing or sensing. Mm-hmm. I can sense more than I can hear, I think.
Right,
but for me, it's very intimidating to do that kind of thing. So this seems like it'd be a lot easier.
Exactly. It is.
Than going to do an evocation and go, I can't hear you, but here I am.
Yeah.
You know?
It is. And, you know, you should still practice those things for sure. And we'll talk about those. But like I said, any magician worth their salt should be able to get answers. And I'm telling you, when you can do this, you will feel so much more connected with life. It's like, I'm not just alone in this world anymore. I'm not just, you know, walking my path, not knowing where I'm going anymore.
Yeah.
I can literally ask a question and in a few days, at the most, have an answer from the universe, from a spirit, from, you know, whatever source of knowledge you wish. I'm not alone in this world anymore, you know, not knowing where I'm going or if I'm going in the right direction or whatever. I can get those answers. You don't know how powerful that is. When you can feel I'm connected, I can get answers. I can not only, you know, I don't want to say pray because it's not praying and I don't like that word, but I can not only ask a question or put my request out there, I can get the answer. It's a two-way communication.
And it is a relationship. It is.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it's just, but praying is like supplication or petition, which, you know, when you pray, you're giving away your power, but when you're using the universe or spirits as allies or as friends, it's totally different.
Mm-hmm. And so you feel so much more connected when you can just get the answer anytime you want. Yeah. I mean, life feels so much more magical.
Can you do more than one question at once?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I have probably 2 or 3 questions a lot of times I'm working on.
I just thought it'd be a good question for people that might ask.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't do like 10 different things at a time.
Yeah, maybe a couple goals.
But you can certainly do 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You know, for sure. And there's so many ways this is applicable. And in fact, this is a good time to mention. So, you know, a lot of people who are listening to these podcasts, who are reading my blog, who are reading the emails that we send out, they want to go deeper with this stuff. And there's so much. I mean, this is just scratching the surface, right? There's so much more we could say. And of course, we will say more in the future about different topics, but, you know, we're only here once a week and there's a lot of stuff we can discuss. So we are starting a newsletter, and it's in fact a print newsletter, which I know sounds unusual, but I think it's a little more magical that way, where you actually receive it personally and you can read it on paper, you know, hold it in your hands. It's knowledge you receive directly, not just look up online and you know, so much knowledge is so instant anymore. But it's a print newsletter and we will send it out monthly. And it's a way to go a lot deeper because this technique, like I said, just barely scratches the surface. And in fact, in the first one we'll be sending out in March, we will be talking about kind of an extension of this topic. And it's the topic of effortlessness and how effortlessness is the key to getting everything you want, the key to performing all magic. And in fact, there's a principle I call willful effortlessness. So I'm very sort of Taoist in my approach, but if you want to say like a left-hand path Taoist approach,
I love it.
I kind of hijack the Taoist approach, but that's my approach because I find that it works. And so this same technique can be extended really far, and I can give a lot of different examples, amazing examples, where I've literally gotten manifestations in a matter of seconds, okay, using a very similar technique. But, through, it's called the Circle of Darkness newsletter, we will be sharing just a lot deeper, more extensively about some of the things we discuss in the podcast and more that we don't discuss here. So this is a brand new thing, and you can learn more information in the show notes, which I'll mention in a second, or you can go to darkascent.org/circle and learn more there as well. But, if you want to take this technique further, we will be discussing that in the newsletter, and just so many different ways you can apply this. And it really is a powerful thing that you can do. It's easy. I mean, it's not like scary. You don't need tools or implements. Those will come later. If you want to do those things, you can, and we'll talk about those. But this is like Black Magic 101. Mm-hmm. Okay, start here. This is what you need to be able to do first, and then you can add the rest. Okay, and that will be a lot more powerful if you have a good foundation here. Okay,
yeah,
so
I feel like this is a really good beginning.
It is, yeah.
It's not so overwhelming, like, what am I doing?
Exactly. So you can get more information there. Like I said, it's darkascent.org/circle. It's called the Circle of Darkness newsletter. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. Feel free to play around with this technique. It's so powerful. And I'd love to hear about your results, or if you have questions about it, you can see our show notes at darkascent.org/DA004. So again, if you would like to subscribe to us, we are here every Friday now at 5 a.m. we're released. So if you would like to subscribe to us, you can check us out next Friday, or find us on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Google Play, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, pretty much you can find us. And we'd love if you subscribe to our podcast. So as always, we thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.
Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.